So our supposition is wrong, that is n plus 1 is unique, and that is the induction step. We have proved that any set of cardinality n plus 1 has only that cardinality, based on the assumption that any set of cardinality n has only that cardinality. This completes the induction. So now we know that any set which has a natural number as its cardinality has the cardinality unique. Now we can say the cardinality. Okay. Now we can tackle that question where we asked whether these two sets had different cardinality. There, I mean, when we asked this question, we were not equipped with what we need to prove at that stage, to prove that these two sets actually have different cardinality. We had to go through the hassle of looking at all possible functions and making sure or verifying that none of them is a bijection. So that job is quite daunting, and it becomes unmanageable as these sets increase in size. But now we can handle this quite effectively. We can settle this. Hence, we now see that are not of the same cardinality. You see, having the same cardinality actually came before even we defined what cardinality of a set like this means. So how can we settle this case using this previous result? We already know that the cardinality of this set is 3 and this one has cardinality 2. Okay, and these two are different, so these two sets cannot have the same cardinality. What does that mean? This sentence that I said right now, these two sets don't have same cardinality in this sense, means it is obvious because they have different cardinalities. However, according to the definition of having the same cardinality, it means that there is a bijection between the two sets. Now, does this tell us that there can be no bijection between these two sets? Yes, because you see, having cardinality 3 means what? Having cardinality 3 means there is a bijection between this set and this set. and this one has cardinality 2 means there is a bijection between this set and this set. Okay, now if there were a bijection between these two sets, then we would also get a bijection between these two sets. Okay, and so this set, which by definition has cardinality 3, also would have cardinality 2, which is not possible by the previous result, which says that cardinality is unique. So that's how we make sure that there is no bijection between these two sets, and that's why from the first definition of having the same cardinality, they don't have. However, we are not writing that much. Instead, we now define what we mean by a finite set. Now we are in a position to define what finiteness even means. So this one is finite set. A set X is said to be finite if it has cardinality n for some natural number n. If this happens, then we say that the set is finite. Otherwise, X is said to be infinite. That is the definition of finite and infinite sets. Oh, I think I made a mistake. This symbol for cardinality of X, cardinality of a finite set, comes only in this definition. So that means wherever we have used this notation before this definition, that is actually wrong, because you see, that's why I had some confusion here also. In lemma 369, in its statement, if we have written cardinality of x minus x is equal to n minus 1, that is slightly wrong, because it just simply says that, I mean, we can use this notation for cardinality, but it does not give a single value of cardinality. I mean, we are not sure at this point. We only know that n minus 1 is a cardinality of x minus x, even after proving lemma 369. Only at the end of this proof of proposition 368, we are sure that this is a unique value, a single value. Only in such a case we use a notation. So I think I wrongly wrote, after defining what cardinality of a set means whenever the set is a finite set. Now only you can see, after that I think I wrote this notation. So that actually comes here after this definition. Okay, so you can make the change, or if you go to the text you can see that it's a mistake on my part. So you can rectify that, and at the end of the proof of that lemma that comes before this proof, we have written this now. Instead of this, you just write in words that n minus 1 is a cardinality of x minus x, the set x minus x. So you please change this, make these changes. And now we are going to define the notation. We denote the cardinality of a finite set x by that symbol hash. And as I have said before, there are other ways of writing this also. Some people write like this, some people write, especially in algebra we see these things. Order of a group, same meaning, that's the number of elements. Now there is an example after this. So this will be 3, 6, 11. The sets 0, 1, 2 and 3, 4 are finite, and so is the empty set. And their cardinalities are this. This set has cardinality 3, this one has cardinality 2, and the empty set of course has cardinality 0. If you look at this definition carefully, it is saying that a set is said to be finite if it has cardinality n for some natural number n. It means that if you are given a set x and you are asked to show that x is finite, you have to actually prove that there is a bijection between x and this set. For some natural number n, that will prove that x is finite. However, if you somehow prove that that is not possible for any natural number n, then x will become infinite by definition. Okay, now we are going to look at an example of an infinite set, and the first set is of course the one that we have developed, the set of natural numbers. So this comes as a result, which is theorem three, 6, 12. The set of natural numbers is infinite, and the proof is by contradiction. Suppose this set is finite Now we are in a position to apply this definition. This supposition implies that it has cardinality, which is a natural number. Then cardinality of n is equal to n for some natural number n. This may look somewhat confusing, but don't confuse yourself. Cardinality of n is equal to n, where n itself is an element of n. Okay, if you wrongly write simply n equal to n, then that will be meaningless for some n belonging to n. So that means there is a bijection. So there is a bijection or bijective map f from this to n. Note that after writing that some set is finite or some set has cardinality n, we are considering a bijection where sometimes we are writing the set as range, sometimes as domain. That does not matter, however, because if there is a bijection from this set to this, then you can consider the inverse of that bijection. That will be a bijection from n to this. So you can use any set anywhere. Now consider the natural numbers, the images of this function f1, f2, etc., fn. Okay, now this is a place where we can use a result whose proof is still not available to us, but in the exercises we will prove that. Then, or we can directly write like this: there exists a natural number m such that f of I is less than or equal to n for all I lying between 1 and n. But why? What have we used here? We have used a result which will be proved in this exercise. This m is what you would call an upper bound for this finite sequence. If you don't understand these terminologies, don't worry, we will come across them when we study upper bounds of sets. For now, you just take it as a fact that such an m exists. In fact, you can just simply see that this m can be taken to be the maximum of these values. However, that is non-rigorous, and we have to rigorously justify that. That's why we have exercise 363. For now, we just assume this. Then m plus 1 is a natural number. M plus 1 is also a natural number, and hence M plus 1 is equal to f of j for some natural number lying between 1 and n, because f is a bijection, so f is a surjection also. So because this m plus 1 belongs to n, so it should be the f image of some element in the domain of f. But then m plus 1 is equal to f of j is less than or equal to m, because f of everything is less than or equal to m, and this is a contradiction. So our supposition is wrong. That is, this is infinite. It cannot be finite. So note that although right after the Peano axioms, we felt that n is infinite, but it took this long for us to even define what finite and infinite mean, and after that to prove that the set we have developed using Peano axioms is actually infinite. So here the proof ends. After this proof, there is a remark about this thing, this m. This is remark 3613. One can also use similar arguments to show that other unbounded sets are infinite, such as the set of rational numbers or the set of real numbers. These are sets and systems which we are yet to see, we are yet to develop. And also this unbounded, this is a word that we don't have a definition for it yet, but you can just simply understand what unbounded means. Here this is bounded by m. This m is called an upper bound for that reason. Unbounded sets neither have okay, no, I cannot say that. Unbounded sets are okay, let us just leave those things. They are either unbounded above or below. So we will see those things when we study boundedness in a metric space. Those things will come. However, it is possible. Okay, see, the definition of finiteness and infiniteness of a set we have defined. It may make you think that that's the end of the story. Either a set is finite or infinite. That is only the beginning. Either a set is finite or is infinite, but there are different sizes of infinity. It is possible that some sets are more infinite than others. For this we have to see chapter 8, particularly section, the third section. After this we have the cardinal arithmetic, which is another way of